Hey everybody, welcome to Lessons with Troy, the podcast. I'm Troy Brenningmeyer. In this episode, my featured guest is the dobro player, writer, and collector of Prewar Dobros, Steve Toth. Steve has several instructional books published by Hal Leonard and also has one of the most unique and prolific collections of Prewar Dobros out there. Today, we are going to talk all about his new book, DOBRO ROOTS, listen to some tracks from some of his CDs, and I also wanted to take this opportunity to share Steve's vast knowledge of the history of Prewar Dobros and some of the musicians that played them. His book, DOBRO ROOTS, can be found on Amazon.com and also many other retail bookstores. For more info about Steve or to buy any of his other material, feel free to email him at sf.toth, that's sf.toth at roadrunner.com. Also, if you want to learn more about Dobro, lap steel, Weissenborn, or pedal steel, you can head over to my site, lessonswithtroy.com. Now, from sunny Southern California, let's please welcome Steve Toth. How's it going, Steve?
Okay, Troy. Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, it's good to have you here. I know that, me, myself, as well as lots of other aspiring Dobro players, kind of started with some of your early books. And I was very excited to get this in the mail the other day. To any of the listeners or viewers on YouTube, this is an incredible book. If you're into the history of Dobro and, want to see some great pictures, really fantastic work. I got to compliment you on that for sure.
Well, just so to point out, it's a lot more than pictures, too. There's a lot of information there and a lot of detailed information on the construction of Dobros and the dimensions of the different era and different years they made them. So there's a lot more than pictures. Some people call it a coffee table book because it's got pictures, but it's really got a lot of great information.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to tap into on this podcast too. And like I was saying in the intro, share some of your knowledge, because I myself, I don't know a whole lot about pre-war Dobros. And in fact, I'm going to probably even, show my ignorance here. But I thought it would be, something important too, to point out when they say pre-war, I'm assuming that's World War II.
World War II is correct. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
From about 1929 to 1941 was just about the starting and stopping date for production. They had to stop when they started World War II because the metal had to be used for the war efforts, and they couldn't use the metal to produce the Dobros anymore. So that's why it stopped then.
That's what I was curious about. In preparing for this, I was wondering, why they, with guitars and things, Dobros, they say pre-war. Why don't they just say the date? But I guess that's why, huh?
Well, but the war was kind of a dividing line, especially for the Dobro, because there weren't any Dobros produced for almost 20 years then. Once they stopped in 1941, they didn't start building them again till the late 50s, really early 60s. A couple of the Dobro brothers started, Rudy and one of the other brothers started to make Dobros again. So it was a void of 20 years there with no production whatsoever.
Nice. Yeah, it's amazing information for sure. Well, how did you get started, playing the Dobro and music in general? Where did all this begin for you?
Well, I got started listening to country music on the radio in the 50s. Country music and rock and roll, of course. And I started playing the guitar, but I also listened to bluegrass music because it was part of country music back then. And, of course, I heard Flatt and Scruggs, and they just were terrific, and I loved them. And I was very fortunate. My parents took me to see a Flatt and Scruggs show a couple of times, and I saw Uncle Josh in person, and he just knocked me out with his Dobro playing, and I just loved the Dobro. And I first played guitar, and then I started playing five-string banjo, and right after that I took up the Dobro. And I had to learn the Dobro myself. There was no instruction material back at that time, and I just learned it from the records, slowing down the records. I used to buy 45 RPM, the little records, Flatt Scruggs, that'd sell their singles. And that's the way you'd buy it. And there were some LPs then, but I'd be buying the 45s. For those who
Really?
don't know what a record is, vinyl LPs were preceded by small 45 RPM records with just one song on each side, and that's the ones I used to buy. Platinum
Nice.
Springs.
Did you ever put the? I've heard of people putting quarters on the needle to kind of weigh it down to slow it down a little bit.
Oh no, I never tried that. No.
Yeah, I don't know where I heard that, but I heard that some people would do that. Put like stack up, change or quarters, and it would slow it down a little bit.
Oh no, I just tried to learn it from the full speed initially.
Nice, nice. Well, yeah. So around what year did you start playing dobro?
That was probably in the late 50s, probably 59, 60. And then I taught my roommate in college how to play guitar, and we played bluegrass and country and folk music. And I played the banjo and the dobro, and he played guitar. And then my brother and I played as a duo, doing Stanley Brothers tunes, and he'd play guitar and sing the lead, and I'd sing the tenor part and play the banjo like Ralph Stanley.
Nice.
And then about 1970, I got in a bluegrass band playing the dobro for the first time in an actual band called the Bluegrass Cousins. And a few years after I joined that band, I decided to write a book on instructions for the dobro because there was nothing around at the time. And I put out Dobro Techniques for bluegrass and country music. And I put it out in about 1974, I guess it was. And 2 years later, the publisher went bankrupt, unfortunately.
Oh, no.
And I never got any feedback from anybody who learned from the book, or I got very little royalty from it, of course. But more importantly, I would hope to hear from people, how they did with it, if it helped them learn, because that was my goal, to really get people to learn from it. I didn't expect to make any money on it.
Yeah.
So I heard nothing for 15 years probably about it. Every once in a while I'd hear about someone who bought it in Scotland or in Australia, but I really never heard any feedback. And then from 1980 to 1990, I totally stopped playing music. I just was doing my day job as an engineer and got away from music totally. And then in the early, I guess it was the early 90s, I started playing bluegrass again in a bluegrass band. And I decided at that time to get Dobro Techniques republished. And I hooked up with Center Stream Publishing, who also worked with Hal Leonard. And we put out Dobro Techniques once again, about 93. And they started distributing it all over the world, which was great. Super. And it's done really fantastic since then. Nice. And then about a year later, I decided to put out a CD of my own, and called Sliding Down the Road. And that got some really nice airplay around the world. That's it. There it is. And nice. I got on Prime Cuts of Bluegrass, a DJ service, and it got played all over the world. And I got a lot of feedback from DJs from around the world. I got tapes of their radio shows from Lithuania, from Austria, from France, from New Zealand, from Australia, from Canada, all over Canada. And I got copies of their radio shows where they were playing my music, and it was so much fun. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, so cool. Very cool. So this might be actually a good time to talk about your CD and to play whatever track you want me to play on it. Tell us maybe a little bit about it and whatever you want to say about it.
Well, it's a very interesting thing about it. It was recorded. We actually did the recording in 1979 with a band I used to play with called Horse Country. And I recorded the band playing one Saturday on my 4-track TIAC recorder. And we just did everything in one day. And I put the stuff away, and I stopped playing for 10 years and never did anything with it. And in 1993, 1993, I decided to buy a DAT digital recorder, 2-track digital recorder, and I did a mix down of the tracks that were done in 1979. And it came out so good, the mix down on the DAT, that I said, maybe I could put an album out of this stuff, and make a CD of it. So I played it for some people, and they said, yeah, that's pretty good. I said, I won't embarrass myself, right? And I said, no, you won't embarrass yourself. It's okay. So I said, well, I'm going to do it then. So I put the CD out, put it together, and it turned out it got really nice response from the DJs. And the tune that got the best response was Step To It. And that's an instrumental that I wrote. And that's on there. If you want to play that, that'd be great.
Yeah, why don't we take a little break now, and I'll play that for everybody, and then when we get back, we can maybe talk a little bit about your book, Dobro Roots, and you can inform myself and all the listeners all about pre-war Dobros. How's that sound?
Okay, great.
Cool. So here's Steve Toth and the song Step To It. Okay, well, welcome back, everybody. I'm interviewing Steve Toth. Well, Steve, you had mentioned on the break a little bit about IBMA and the CD, and tell our listeners that story that you were telling me about.
Yes, so after I put the CD out, I decided to go to the IBMA World of Bluegrass, and it was held in Owensboro, Kentucky at that time. And it was a fantastic experience, and just to see all the top players in bluegrass music in one location, and walking around the exhibition area the first day, I happened to run into Tim Shearhorn's booth where he was showing his Dobros, and there's a Dobro player sitting there playing a Dobro. And he was fantastic. I mean, he was incredible. He was so good that I said, I had my Dobro with me. I said, I'm not going to take this out because this fellow's so good. I said, this is incredible. And I was blown away. And he wasn't even a person I knew. His name was Lubosh Novotny, and he was from the Czech Republic, and he played with a band called Druha Trava, and they were a fantastic Czech band, and they actually did a set there that weekend that week at the festival.
Nice.
And but that evening, at one of the music rooms where they had different music being shown, hospitality suites, I ran into this fella, and he walked up to me, and he looked at my name tag, and he says, "Are you Steve Toth?" I said, "Yes." He says, "You know, I learned how to play from your book, Dobro Techniques." I said, "That's great. I can't believe it." He says, "You got to play a song from that book for me." And he made me sit down and play Home Sweet Home, which was one of the songs in the book. And he got such a kick out of it. And I got a kick out of it too.
Nice. What a great story.
And then the next year I went to the IBMA again. And that was the year that the Great Dobro Sessions was up for an award. And Jerry Douglas was set to be on stage to play a song with a few other Dobro players like Uncle Josh and Tut Taylor, and did I say Brother Oswald? Brother Oswald, and Gene Wooten. So they were scheduled to play a tune from the Great Dobro Sessions. But Jerry got the idea to get all the professional Dobro players on stage at one time when they played it. So as they played, more and more Dobro players would come on the stage. So at the end of the stage, we had like over 20 Dobro players, of the top Dobro players in the world. Phil Ledbetter came up with me, and Junior Barber, and Tim Shearhorn was there. He came up, and you name it, whoever was in, Sally Van Meter was there. She came up, and so we had everybody there. And a DJ from Europe who was playing my music happened to take a picture from the balcony of that gathering of these Dobro players, and he gave me a copy of it the next day.
Yeah.
And I had it blown up, and I called it the Historic Dobro Players Photo. And I have a copy of that picture reproduced in Dobro Roots. So for anybody who gets a copy of Dobro Roots, they'll see it. And it's just a fantastic picture, very historic. I gave a copy to Jerry Douglas, and he couldn't get over it. He didn't realize anybody took a picture of it. I gave you a copy. If you get a chance, you might be able to put it up on screen while we're talking about this.
Oh yeah. When I go, it's probably already been shown, in the future. Let's say, when I go back and edit it, I'll put it up there for sure.
Sure. So then I did two more. I did two more books. Then I did a Dobro Classics book, which had 20 classic tunes that you play at jam sessions, tabbed out, and then I did a CD that went with it, and then I did a Dobro Christmas book.
Oh, cool!
And then I attended in 2000. I went to the first Resogat.
Oh yeah.
That John Dopera Jr. put on at his home in Pennsylvania. And the Resogat gathering of resonator guitar players still goes on now, and they have it every year now. I believe it's in Wilkesboro, North Carolina.
Yeah. I try to go there each year. I'm actually planning on going there this year. But that's cool that you were at the very first one, man.
Yeah, and the first one is when I got the urge to start collecting Dobros, and that's when I started to collect them. And I went on this adventure of collecting pre-war Dobros. I had always loved them over the years, and I just got the desire to try to get mostly every model that they made in the pre-war period, from 29 to 41, and I was able to collect almost every model, not quite, but almost every model, and my friend was also a collector. My good friend Larry Malls, he's from Philadelphia, and he collects.
I know Larry, yeah.
Yeah, and he collects also. And what I didn't have, he would have. So I ended up moving to California in 2009, and that put me very close to the NAMM. I don't know if you've heard of NAMM, the National Association of Music Merchants.
Yes.
NAMM has their headquarters in Carlsbad, which is about 10 minutes from me. And they have a museum of making music there at the NAMM headquarters.
Okay.
And they had the old paperwork from the National Dobro Company that was left over. And they had all that historical documentation there where I could go and look at it and look up information and old catalogs on pre-war Dobros. So I said, gee, I have this at my disposal, and I have a pile of pre-war Dobros. I said, maybe I should do a book on pre-war Dobros. And that's what led to Dobro Roots being produced. And I picked the name Dobro Roots because the pre-war instrument was really the roots of the new instruments and the modern instruments that are produced today. And a lot of the characteristics of the initial Dobros still carry over today, even though there's been modern improvements that have been very greatly enhanced the sound. But still, the old ones have a unique sound that the new ones don't put out.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm curious too. How did you go about buying these? I mean, were you on eBay or just? I mean, how'd you go about finding all these?
If it wasn't for the internet, I couldn't do it. It was from the internet. eBay was I got some off eBay, but I also searched out the different music stores that had websites where they would have Dobros listed. And I just kind of shop the internet and search and just hunt on the internet for pre-war Dobros.
Yeah.
And from that, I was able to put together a real nice collection. I would have never been able to do it without the internet. Definitely not.
Wow. And I'm just picturing your house, it's I mean, just to have that many Dobros, in your house, I'm sure your wife is a amazing person to.
My wife is a saint. She's a saint. And she's great. She doesn't discourage me. She always encourages me. I said, I saw this really great Dobro again, Louise. I'm thinking about getting it. What do you think? She says, no, if you like it, go ahead, go get it. That's all right. That's all right. And she's always been understanding. Always been understanding.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, why don't we dive into some of these Dobros and you can kind of inform us all about kind of the history of I don't know how much you want to share about the history of the Dobro and the Dopera brothers and any of that. Feel free,
Sure. Well, let me just hold up the book again. I don't know if they could see it when you held it up.
Yeah, there you go.
I'll hold it up here again. Dobro Roots.
Yeah.
And the Dobro on the cover, this cover was produced by the publisher without my knowledge. They took one of the photos that I had provided to them, and they made the cover up. And this is an actual Dobro that I have. It's a very fancy model 125 custom Dobro, and they did a beautiful job of making the cover. And it's a hardcover book, and that's one of the Dobros that's in there, and there's a lot of pictures of it. But the Dobro was invented in probably around 1928 by John Dopera. And at the time, he was still part of the National Company because he invented the National Tricone instrument. And he was part of the National Company with his brothers and several other business people. And of course, his objective when he made the Tricone was to make a guitar louder because they're playing Hawaiian music on traditional guitars and they weren't loud enough. So he was trying to make a louder guitar. And the Tricone was always his favorite instrument. But around 1928, 29, he started to have some business difficulties with his partners. And he ended up leaving the company in 1929. But he had invented the Dobro in 1928 as a side project. And he had the patents put in Rudy, his brother's name, Rudy Dopera. So the Dobro patents all show Rudy DoPera as the inventor, but the Dobro was actually invented by John DoPera.
Ah, okay.
And then they started to produce them in 1929 and started to put them out on the market. And they put them out and they would price them, price them according to what they would sell for, but they would name the models after the price. So a model 45 sold for $45. A model 55 sold for $55. A model 85 was $85, and on up. And that
what year?
Excuse me.
What year around about what year are we talking? Just to get a mindset. You know, I know how much Dobros cost now, let's say, and then for $45 to get a Dobro. I mean, what around what year were we talking?
That was 1929, before the stock market crashed.
Ah, okay.
So they had priced them at $45 at the low end, because the Nationals were selling for in the hundreds of dollars. The metal-bodied Nationals, which were their competition. So they were undercutting them by selling them for $45, $55, $85. That was the list price. Of course, there was always a big markup on instruments like there is today. So you could buy them for less than that. But those were the list prices of them. And that first group series they put out in 1929, all the prices ended in 5. So when I did my book, I call that the 5 series of Dobros, of California 5 series. Because then in 1932, they put out a new series and the numbers ended in 6. So the Model 45, they cut the price down to $36, and they called it a Model 36. And it was a very similar model. And a Model 55 became a Model 56. And a Model 85 became a Model 86. So I call that the California 6 series. And that was produced from about 1932 to 1933. And there's and the book covers all these different series in chronological order. So it kind of puts some order to the pre-war instruments where there was never any order before.
Yeah.
People never knew which ones were which and when they were made and who made them. But there were only California-made Dobros for those first 3 or 4 years. And in 1933, the Dobro company couldn't produce enough instruments, and they licensed the Regal company in Chicago to produce Dobros for sale east of the Mississippi. So Regal started to produce instruments in 1933. So the next series of instruments that I designate, I call the Regal First Series, and it corresponded with the California 7 series. And the models they had now they dropped the price to $27 because we're in the middle of the Depression now.
Okay.
So cut the list price even further to $27 for the lowest model. The next model was a Model 37. And then there was a Model 45, and that was about it. They cut the line down to 3 or 4 models, and there wasn't a lot of models like they had in the early days. And those are the models that we know of. The Model 27 is what Uncle Josh played, and he was called a Julie, and that was a Model 27. And later on, I'm going to have, if you can, play a tune that I've played on a Model 27. That's like Uncle Josh's. Then the Model 37 was a model made by Regal that Mike Aldridge played. And Mike just made that one famous. And then Uncle Josh also played a Model 37 later in his career. And Jerry Douglas started with a Model 37.
Okay.
So that's now in about the mid 1930s. We're talking about mid to late 1930s. What would happen at the same time, concurrently, electric guitars were invented, and Hawaiian electric guitars were invented. So the volume was increased dramatically beyond what the resophonic instruments like a Dobro or a National could produce. So while the instrument was earth-shattering when it came out in the 1920s. By the mid-1930s, it got overwhelmed by the electric steel guitar and electric guitars. So the sales started to drop off. And they started to make less and less Dobros in the late 1930s until 1941, World War II started, and they had to stop making Dobros completely because they couldn't use the metal, because all metal had to be used in war for the war production. And then no Dobros were made again for about 20 years, from 1941 till about the early 1960s. And then Rudy Dopera and a couple of his brothers started making Dobros again. John Dopera just had a small fiddle shop in Escondido, which is about 15 minutes from me. And he was out of the Dobro business completely by then. But Rudy Dopera started making them again. And that led to the resurgence of the manufacture of Dobros.
Gotcha.
And that led to the eventual creation of the modern Dobro that we know today.
Gotcha. Okay. And for any listeners that may not know about the name Dobro,
right,
where it came from, let's talk about that maybe.
Yeah, the name Dobro comes from the word for good in the Slavic languages is Dobro.
Okay.
And I happen to be of Croatian descent, and I went to Croatia on a visit, and Dobro means good in Croatian. So when you say good morning to somebody, it's Dobro jutro. When you say good day, it's Dobro dan. When you say good evening, it's Dobro veče. So you have Dobro all the time in Croatia, and I'm sure a lot of the Slavic countries. But it also is an acronym for their name, the Dopera. It took D-O for Dopera and B-R-O from brothers, and they put it together to make it Dobro. So that's how they formed the name Dobro.
Nice.
And Dobro was the name of the brand of instrument initially. But over the years, the Dobro also became like a generic name.
Yeah.
So that a Dobro player is a player who plays a slide instrument on his lap with a steel bar in a Dobro style. The Dobro brand name is now owned by the Gibson Company. So the Dobro brand instrument and the brand name is owned by them, but the Dobro generic name is still used quite often, as you and I do, to designate a player of a Dobro.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
And when you're talking about all the Dobros in your book and the history of the Dobro, I mean, was it mostly square neck or round neck Dobros that was being made back then?
Well, in the beginning, they produced mainly round necks because they felt that if anyone wanted to play it Hawaiian style or Dobro style, they could put a nut raiser on it and play a round neck the same way they would play a square neck. So in the early days, in 1929, 1930, 31, they produced very few square neck Dobros. So the early square neck Dobros are quite rare and hard to find. By the mid-1930s, they were making a lot of square neck Dobros, and there were more square necks than round necks. Because the Hawaiian music had taken off by that time, and they were catering to the Hawaiian guitar players, and they were making the square necks for them.
Yeah.
And you get a little bit, maybe a small differential of more solidity in the sound of a square neck, but not that much. A good round neck will sound really good compared to a good square neck. But the square necks are just a little more solid. The neck will stay straighter than a round neck. But so early days, round neck, mid-30s to end of 30s were more square necks were made.
Gotcha. And just for my sake and the listener's sake, I mean, what's some of the main differences between the pre-war Dobros? I'm sure there's a lot, and then today's modern Dobro. You know, how have they kind of changed things on them?
Okay, the initial Dobros were built with a small body, a classical guitar-sized body, like a 00 Martin-sized body. And it was a very shallow depth of body. It was about 2 7/8 inch deep body. So it wasn't very deep. So you didn't have a lot of deep low end. As they went along, they started to make the bodies deeper. When Regal kicked in 1933, they started making them about 3.5 inches deep. And the California people started to follow suit and make them the same depth because they found they gave them a little more sound, a much deeper sound and fuller sound. So that the Dobros coming out of California in the mid 30s and the Regal Dobros coming out of Chicago had these deeper bodies. And the modern Dobros today have like 3.5 to 3 3/4 inch to 4 inch deep bodies. Plus the body size today is bigger, is a large body. You've heard of the L-body Dobros and the L-body that Tim Shehorn introduced. And the E-body that Paul Beard makes, that's a bigger body overall. So it's deeper and it's larger. So you get a fuller sound out of it. But you do lose something on the high end on those. And that bite that you got on those pre-war Dobros from the bodies that were slightly smaller in circumference and slightly shallower in depth and construction. All the pre-war Dobros, by the way, were made of plywood. They didn't make any of solid wood. Nowadays, most of the Dobros are made of solid woods, either mahogany or walnut or rosewood with spruce top. But back in the 30s, whatever the topping wood was, it was on top of plywood subbase. So you'd have nice mahogany Dobros, but they would be a mahogany veneer. You'd have spruce top would be spruce veneer, and walnut was the same way, walnut veneer on top of plywood. And believe it or not, the lowest end Dobros, the Model 27 from the 1930s, was about the best sounding Dobro they made. The high end Dobros made of walnut were probably the least best sounding, least sound. For some reason, it was something in the wood with the walnut giving it a solidity or something that didn't allow the resonance of that tone chamber to resonate. Whereas the Model 27 was made probably a little thinner, less expensive birch plywood, and it had a certain resonance to it that gave the Model 27 Dobro a great sound. And likewise, the Model 37, which was also from the 30s. And the Model 45s also had a nice sound. But you get up to the Model 125 and the 186 and the 206, and they were beautiful. And you'll see them in the book. They're beautiful instruments, and the woodwork and the engraving on the metal is beautiful, but the sound was not as good as the inexpensive everyday Dobro.
Wow, isn't that something?
Yeah.
And maybe talk a little bit too. All these Dobros had what's called a sound well, right?
Right. Almost all of them had sound wells. The California Dobros all had sound wells, which was a ring of wood underneath the vibrating aluminum cone that really produced most of the sound coming out of the Dobro. The vibrations of the string was amplified by the aluminum cone. And it sat on this ring of wood called the sound well. And the California Dobros all had parallelogram holes in them. All the Regal Dobros had round holes. So you can quite often tell the difference between a California Dobro and a Regal Dobro by the fact that the Regals had the round holes and the California had the parallelograms. But the early California Dobros also had round holes. So the very, very early ones in 1929, 1930 had round holes, but then they went to the parallelogram. The other thing they did, they had originally spun cones where they spun them on a lathe. Then they went to a stamping method of stamping the aluminum cones. And then they went to a stamped cone with 8 legs on it, or lugs. and they made a short spider that sat on these lugs. And I think they did that to get a brighter sound out of the instrument, to balance out the bass sound that was being produced. But later on, they started putting long spiders on the lug cones that were designed for short spiders. So you had a lug cone with a short spider, you could have a lug cone with a long spider on it. And some of the real fanatics of pre-war sound liked the lug cones with a short spider. If they had a long spider, it gave a little different sound. To my ear, it depends on the instrument. They can be comparable. But to a true fanatic of pre-war Dobro sound, and like Uncle Josh's Dobro sound, that short spider on a lug cone was the sound that they looked for, and the instrument that they looked for.
Nice.
And with the book Dobro Roots, I have a CD that has 15 tunes on it that I played on 15 different pre-war Dobros. And I played a Model 27 that had its original lug cone with a short spider, and that's the one I played on there.
Nice.
And I think I've got that available for you to play if you'd like to try to cue that up. And while you do, I can get out that instrument. I can actually show you that instrument.
Yeah, so before we take a break, tell the listeners what are we getting ready to listen to again?
We're getting ready to listen to a Model 27 Dobro and I'm playing Fireball Male on it.
Okay. And
it's just me playing with a track I made with bass and guitar on another channel, and the Dobro on a separate on the left channel. And I'm playing Fireball Male on a 1934 Model 27, serial number 6999.
Very cool.
You know the details, and that one's in the book, and you can see it. And I'm going to go get it now while you play that, okay? And I'll show it to you.
Okay. So we'll be right back. Okay, so welcome back, and Steve now has that guitar that Dobro that was just played.
I've got it right here, Troy, Model 27 from 1934. This is very similar to the one Uncle Josh played. He called it Julie. That was the name he called it, and it's got a sunburst front, binding only on the top of the body. Bottom of the line instrument at that time in 1934, but had a great sound. Had unbound fingerboard, very simple. It had the typical California peg head with square slots on the slots. The Regal made instruments had rounded slots. That's another kind of way you can detect the difference between a California Dobro and a Regal made Dobro.
Okay.
And because they would have the same logo often on the Regals. They'd have the same Dobro logo, and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference from that. And then the back, very simple, just plain dark finish back and sides. Very simple, very cheap to produce. And it had, the better models had 3 holes here at the end of the fingerboard. The Model 27 and the next one we're going to get to, the Model 37, have no holes here. So there's no holes here. Just they have the 2 screen holes, which are typical of a Dobro. And this, of course, for those who don't know, is called the cover plate. And underneath here is the cone, the aluminum cone that gives us the sound, the unique sound of the Dobro.
And also, I'm just curious, what was the now a lot of the modern Dobros don't have the covers on the holes. It's just an open hole. And then I know a lot of those old ones had the mesh covers over the holes, huh?
Right. The mesh cover was probably put on there as decorative and also to keep things from falling in. But it was found in recent years that you really lost a little bit of sound by having that screen. So the modern Dobros now have no more screen here. It's just a ring or a finished off circle here with an opening, with a round opening to allow the sound to come out more.
And I also noticed too on that one, I could be wrong, but it looks like it has a round neck, right?
This is a round neck, yes.
Okay, and
Most
that's what
of the
Josh...
Model 27s were round neck. That low-end model was, in fact, this California Model 27 during this time frame was only made in a round neck. Later on, they did produce a square neck Model 27.
Ah.
1936, they started making some square neck ones. But until then, they were almost all just round neck. And the catalog indicated it was only a round neck.
And that's what Josh Graves played with a round neck.
Josh played with a nut raiser, and I've got one on here. Here's a nut raiser.
Nice.
There isn't even a high nut on this. I have a nut raiser just like Josh used to do. He didn't even bother putting a high nut on it. But nowadays, we'd probably put a high nut because you'd get a little better sound with it. But I find that this gives a great sound, so I leave it.
Very cool. Let's listen to another one. Tell us about another one.
Okay, the next one we're going to listen to is a Model 37, the same style that Mike Aldridge played, that Josh played in his later career, and Jerry Douglas played at the beginning of his career. Model 37 made by the Regal company, but with the Dobro name. And we're gonna listen to that now. I'm playing Pickaway on that.
Pickaway.
Yep.
Okay.
1936, this Dobro.
Nice. 1936. Let's take a break, and you can grab that Dobro, and we'll listen to a little Pickaway.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, well, welcome back, and Steve's going to talk about this Dobro. Tell us a little bit about this one.
Now we've got a Model 37 from 1936. This one's made by the Regal company, but it has the regular Dobro logo on it. And this one happens to have a solid peg head. And in 1936, they went to solid peg heads on the Dobros because tuning machines were made available at a reasonable enough cost that they could produce them with solid peg heads. So the Regal company made them with solid peg heads. The California Dobros were still produced with slotted peg heads. But the Regal Dobros, a lot of them were made with the solid peg heads. And these are preferred because it's a little easier to change the strings on a solid peg head Dobro than a slot head. All the modern Dobros are made now with solid peg heads. But if anyone's tried to change strings on a slotted, they know the difference. It's a little more difficult. When you get used to it, it's not bad, but this is more convenient.
Yeah.
And this one I've put a high nut on. I don't have a nut raiser on, so you can see that. And this one had a painted mahogany body. It was actually a fake mahogany finish, and you can see it more on the back. It's supposed to be just a replication of mahogany.
Nice.
And yet this became one of the most popular models of pre-war Dobros. In 1970 and the 1980s, even into the 1990s, it was still popular. Until Tim Shearhorn came along and Paul Beard and Rudy Jones, and they made the hot rod machines that we have nowadays. And this had binding on the top and the bottom of the body. Okay. And it still had no binding on the fingerboard. Most of them didn't. Once in a while I had it, but this had no binding. And they had no holes at the end of the fingerboard, once again, like the Model 27. And this had a little bit of finish on the side, a little sunburst finish on the side,
nice,
as well as the top. So it's a little fancier than the Model 27, but it was still pretty much a birch plywood painted to look like mahogany.
Yeah.
In most instances. And the body depth was a little bit deeper. So you were talking, I think, about 3.5 inches on this. That other Model 27, I think, had about 3.25 inch, 3 3/8 inch. So they incrementally increased them. They didn't go all in one size. They kind of incrementally increased them.
Okay.
Okay. So that's a Model 37. So now the next one we're going to do is a Model 45. And the next song we're going to hear is Red Haired Boy, played on a Model 45 from 1934. It's serial number 1499. And this one's in the book too. Take a look if you want.
Okay. Let's go ahead and cut to that, and we'll see you back in just a little bit.
Okay.
Let's welcome back Steve, and he's going to talk about this one now.
Okay, here we have the Model 45 you just heard. The Model 45 now is a $45 model. So it's got a spruce top, again, a spruce veneer, and has a mahogany sides and back. And this is real mahogany veneer now. It's not a painted mahogany. So I don't know if you can see the grain of the mahogany there in that picture.
Yeah.
And it has a purfling down the middle of the back, a little fancier, nice. And very nice instrument. And they had a nice sound. Josh played one of these early on in his career, and even Brother Oswald played them. But nice. they have a real nice sound. When they're set up correctly. They have binding on the fingerboard. The fingerboard on these was usually real ebony.
Ooh, nice.
And here you had the 3 holes that at the end of the fingerboard that were just decorations to kind of emulate a lyre pattern, which is what the Dobro logo is. It's actually a lyre. And I'll show you the logo.
Yeah.
Up close, if you can see it, but it's actually a symbol of a lyre, and there's 3 little dots under the Dobro name, and those are the 3 dots that are at the end of the fingerboard. That's why they put them at the end of the fingerboard, believe it or not.
Very cool. Yeah. Wow, I never knew that.
In fact, this one actually has a mahogany veneer on the peg head. You just can't see it in the picture, but believe me, it's a very thin veneer of mahogany.
Yeah,
of real mahogany on top of just a basswood, possibly, neck.
And you know, something that strikes that I'm noticing too is with all these, even though they have a square neck and you're never going to use the frets, they decided to put frets on Dobros, which
right. They always had metal, almost always had metal frets. Yes.
Yeah.
And this is this is a square neck also. 37 was a square neck. I forgot to mention that, but this is a square neck.
Yeah.
And this is a Regal made, so I should show you that. Here's a Regal made peg head with the rounded slots.
Ah, okay.
See, the slots are rounded there.
Yep.
You can catch that or not, but
and you were saying Regal's out of Chicago at that time, right?
Exactly. Regal's making them out of Chicago for distribution east of the Mississippi. And California Dobro instruments were west of the Mississippi.
Nice.
Now I'm going to show you and have you listen to a Model 45 made in California.
Okay.
It's from 1936. It's serial number 8906. Very unusual, and I'll show you what it is when you play it. I'm playing green sleeves on here.
Okay.
So let's give a listen to that.
Okay, we'll see you back in just a little bit.
Okay.
Okay, well, let's welcome back Steve. Let's talk about this one.
Okay, now this is a Model 36, very rare and unusual Model 45. Model 45 from 1936, made in California. And it's spruce top with the mahogany sides and back. Let's see if I can get you to see the back.
Nice.
It has a double purfling in the back. and has a very wide square neck. You won't be able to tell it there, but let me just show you. The neck is about 2 inches wide. They used to be really about like 1 3/4. This one's 2 inches wide. And it's very rare in that it's got a solid peg head made in California. It's the only Dobro I've ever seen made in California that has a solid peg head.
Huh.
Every other one has a slotted peg head. So someone probably ordered this special order because it also has butterbean tuners that are very much like they used on Martin guitars in that period. Can you see those tuners there?
Sure, yeah.
Real nice butterbean tuners that are coveted now, and most of the reissue Martins have butterbean tuners on, and people just look for them all the time. And this Dobro happened to be one with butterbean tuners. And it's got a great sound. I've had people say this sounds almost as good as a shear horn.
Oh, wow.
It's made in the pre-war period, 1936. And it's really great. Well, you just heard it sometime on Greensleeves, but it's hard to tell on that recording because I didn't use really good microphones when I recorded those tracks you're listening to. But it's a wonderful sounding instrument.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, the next one I'm going to play for you is the Model 125 Custom that's on the cover of the book. It's fancy walnut, gold-plated engraved Dobro that came out of the collection, I'm told, of Rudy Dopera. It came with his own personal Dobro. And it's beautifully gold-plated and engraved, and it also sounds great, too. And the tune I'm playing is Sometimes Alone. It's a tune that I wrote, and I hope you like this one.
Okay, well, let's take a listen to it right now. Well, welcome back, Steve. Let's learn a little bit about this one now.
Okay, now this is a beautiful instrument, the Model 125 custom. A Model 125 normally had chrome-plated parts, but this is all gold-plated because, as I mentioned, it came from Rudy Dopero's collection, and it was a special guitar that he had made, and it's engraved, beautiful engraving pattern, and it's got beautiful walnut veneer on it, and the back is just gorgeous. I'll show you the back.
Oh, man.
It's really highly figured, four-way matched walnut back. And it's a beautiful looking dobro, and it's a beautiful sounding dobro. Now this one's from about 1931. It's a round neck. Round neck. They had a logo on it that was made of celluloid. It's not the decal logo that they have on most of the other instruments. It's a celluloid logo, and just a beautiful instrument. And great sounding too, and worked out great as a cover on the book.
So that's the one on the cover.
Which was a surprise to me, but I was happy to see it.
Yeah, you can see the cover behind you, and as you're holding it up, it's kind of
right. Yeah. That's it. That's it on my wall, my office.
Nice.
Oh, we were talking before about Jerry Douglas and the Earls of Leicester.
Yeah.
I was playing now.
Yeah, I was asking Steve, I knew that Jerry Douglas is playing a bunch of older Dobros, and I said, well, do you know anything about that? And then he, go ahead and tell him what you told me.
Right. Well, Jerry started out playing his old Model 37 that he originally started his career with, similar to the one that I had played for you earlier, a Model 37 made by the Regal company. And I met him doing a performance about a year and a half ago. My band opened for them at a club here.
Oh, nice.
And I took some Dobros down for him to listen to. And he played his for me, his Model 37. And he said, gee, my Model 37, I've played it so much, I've worn out the cover plate, so it's cutting my hand. And I wish I had another good Prewar Dobro. Well, I brought some Dobros for him to listen to, not looking for him to have a Dobro of mine. But about a month later, we happened to make a deal, and he got one of my Dobros, a Model 27 square neck made by Regal. And he was playing that all last year on his shows, and he loved the sound of it that day, and he had to have it. So he got it from me, and I was happy to have it.
Oh, how cool, man.
And he gave it a name. He named it Steve.
No way.
Yeah. I couldn't believe it.
How cool is that?
Yeah, so I was really thrilled about that. And it sounds great. I try to catch all the YouTube versions of the Earls playing when he's playing that Dobro, and it sounds good. It really sounds good.
Is there any way we can, like, if I get on YouTube, that I can spot that it's that Dobro that you're talking about? How?
Yes, the way you can spot it has a binding on just the top of the body, because it's a Model 27.
Okay.
And his Dobro has binding on the top and the bottom of the body.
Ah.
It's a Model 37. So you can spot the one that he's using that I had, that he got from me. And it's got just the binding on the top of the body. And it's pretty easy to pick up and to see.
Okay.
On YouTube. And there's quite a few things from he started playing it in about December of 94, played it all of 95. And lately I've been seeing him playing his Model 37 again, and I haven't had a chance to talk to him to find out what happened with the 27. I think he probably got tired of changing the strings on the slotted peg head it has. It has a slotted peg head. And, but I have to talk to him about that and find out what's going on. But no, you can tell if you want and pick it up when you see it. Yeah,
that's so cool. Well, yeah, Jerry's kind of, to me, like an enigma. I've never talked to him. I've never had any communication with him, but of course he was my inspiration to even start playing the slide guitar,
Oh, he's a great guy, but he knows so many people. It's hard for him to be in touch with him because he's got so many people he knows. He's played on everybody's record. I mean, you name anybody and he's probably played something on their records for him, And he
Yeah.
knows that many more people in the music industry.
Isn't that something?
But he's still a nice, down-to-earth guy. My wife and I went with my son to see him at a show here in California last year. And it was pouring rain, and it was an outdoor concert. And we pulled up in the parking lot, and we wanted to find Jerry to see what was going on. And I got out of my car, and someone's yelling out of a bus, "Hey, Steve!" And it was Jerry, and he was in his bus. So he invited us in the bus, and we sat down and we were talking. He was playing some music for us. The concert never went on that night, but we had such a nice time with him just for about a half an hour or so in his bus. We had a great time.
How cool is that?
It was great. It was great. It was very nice to my wife and my son. And my son loves his playing. My wife loves his playing. Everybody does. It's just fantastic. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. Yeah. Well, what else you got for us? You got anything else up your sleeve, or where are we at?
I have I can go on for 3 hours with you if you want, but I think that's where we ought to end it for today, because I think if you want, we can probably do a part 2 of this sometime later, and I'll show you a bunch of different instruments. But I think that covers pretty much the general overview of what the book has in it.
Nice.
Dobro Roots, and if someone gets the book, they'll be able to see all these books, read about each of the instruments, listen to them being played on the CD. It's called Sounds of the Prewar Dobro, and it's a sampling CD. It's not a CD necessarily to listen to all the time, but
sure,
something to listen to hear the different sounds.
Yeah.
The instruments, but hopefully it's pleasant enough that you can sit and listen to it.
Absolutely. So yeah, let's just plug this again. Yeah. So everybody check out the
Dobro
book,
Roots.
Dobro Roots.
Center Stream is the publisher, distributed by Hal Leonard Publishing.
Yep, comes with a CD in the back of it there. And I got mine on Amazon, and I know that you said that it's at Barnes and Noble too, and
Barnes and Noble, and distributed at music stores and bookstores throughout the world. It's very widely distributed, but if you can't find it in a store near you, you can always get it online.
Yeah, and if you can't see it because it was kind of hard for me to even see on Amazon, but it's a nice thick, hardbound book. This thing is, especially for the price that you get it for, it's incredible. The pictures are just wonderful pictures and wonderful information in there, if you can see that. And tell them too that the track that we played off your CD, looks like that. And
that CD right on the cover of the Dobro on the cover of the CD is a Model 37, by the way, from 1936. And it has a variation on the cover plate called the poinsettia cover plate, little different layout of the holes on the cover.
Oh, nice.
And
okay.
That's the instrument that I played for years and years with bluegrass bands. And I still play it now when we perform a lot.
Nice.
I've pretty much gone back to playing my pre-war Dobros now when we perform with my bluegrass group. Well, my group's called Old Town Road, and we perform here in the Southern California area. And we'll be at the Summergrass Bluegrass Festival in August, right here in Vista, California.
Very cool. Yeah. I gotta come out to California again. I took a little road trip. Man, it was 2004, I think, and we started in Oakland. Me and two buddies. We rented a Ford Explorer, and we slept on the beach. We stayed at people's houses, and we came all the way down to San Diego, not knowing where we would stay, and then we drove all the way back up, to fly out. But what I noticed too, and you playing these old Dobros, definitely you're not putting pickups in it. You're miking them live, I'm sure. What's your opinion of like a good microphone for a Dobro?
I just go with what the sound people use. When I do a sound myself, I use an SM58 Shure. It's not the optimum by any means, but it gives you a decent sound. It's far from the optimum. I know that a lot of guys use better mics than that, but I've never gotten into much about the sound production. Playing with a group, but there are some Shures that are good. There's some Audio Technicas that are good.
Okay.
Usually there's a condenser mic available with a better sound company when they're doing the sound at a festival, and they have a good mic for you for the Dobro.
Yeah, it's always hard to mic the Dobro. I found, the Shure, it's a great mic to prevent feedback, but then the sound isn't, as good as like a condenser mic. But then a condenser mic, if you don't have the right monitor set up, it's definitely feeding back.
Very tricky to get them balanced correctly. And to me, I'd rather hear the Dobro, even if the quality isn't quite there, and hear it well through an SM58 or SM57. Yeah.
Well, very cool. Well, thanks so much, Steve. I think we'll wrap it up. And man, I can't thank you enough. And it's great to finally meet you and talk with you, and hopefully everybody else enjoyed it as much as I did. All the information that you've got stored away up there. It's great.
Well, this was fun. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, and I hope the folks enjoyed it.
Okay. Well, we'll see you down the road.